The quality of your life is determined by the quality of questions you ask. And oftentimes I think that people ask questions, but they ask wrong and shallow questions. Like there's no dumb questions, but sometimes it's shallow.
If you're wanting to grow and you don't have the resources to dive into learning something new as far as financially yet, there are so many free resources that require nothing other than your time.
Great experiences we've had getting to see people sort of transition into new things that they want to be a part of, seeing their mind sort of transform in how they think, becoming your own banker and really starting to adopt this mentality of protection in order to grow.
Welcome to the Cashflow Legendz podcast with your hosts Nate, Brandon, and Brock. Remember, our insights are not direct financial advice, so consult with your financial team before making any decisions based on the topics discussed in this show.
Welcome back to Cashflow Legendz. Nate and Brock and I are stoked to be here with you today. If any value is being brought to you that you feel like you would want to share with others, please don't ever hesitate to share this. The 5-star reviews are greatly appreciated, but only if you feel like we deserve them. We would not ever want you to give anything other than what you thought we deserved. We love comments. We love interacting. And this conversation today is going to be a lot of fun because it's relevant in the world that we live in with social media. So Nate and Brock and I send information out on social media pretty much daily now between LinkedIn, TikTok, Facebook, yada, 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 all the places that information could go. But I don't know if you guys are like me, but sometimes when I'm watching other feeds, there are certain feeds that I immediately raise an eyebrow because I'm like, I don't know if there's some truth in that or if that's clickbait or what. And the longer that we've been in the world of sharing information on social media, it doesn't take long for my eyebrow to raise. So today we're going to maybe do a little exposing of potential myths that are out there about money and people who say they're gurus related to financial success. But I want to start by saying this. I realize how quickly this could become pot calling the kettle black if we don't watch it. So I want to be clear on the differences that we see with this. So when you guys start scrolling and you see financial gurus giving advice, what are some things you see said that make you go, I don't know about that? Or what are some red flags that you notice?
Well, Brandon, you mentioned clickbait. The reality is a lot of influencers out there are just playing the game of just trying to get people drawn into whatever they're trying to say. I think one of the things that I'm a little biased, but one of the things that I think we do a good job of is just purely putting out what we're talking about. You know, if somebody hears something specific that we say that draws them in, hey, that's great, but we're not intentionally like trying to grab people's attention and play the game, so to speak, which is really counter to the whole marketing world out there, because most marketing people right now would be like, y'all are crazy, like what are y'all, you're spinning your wheels or whatever. I feel like we just operate with a certain level of integrity when it comes to how we want to present our information to the world. Like there's so many different things that I could think of as far as like red flags. I mean, one of the biggest ones is buy term, invest the difference. I mean, I hear that and think it's a red flag, but that may not be a red flag to somebody else because that's traditional, conventional advice. That's typical to the financial world. But the red flags we hear are not necessarily going to be the red flags that other people hear.
So what about this one, Brock? You need to buy my course to succeed, no matter what it costs. What's your thoughts on that?
Never heard it, but I'd be like, wow, this person is interesting. I mean, it's so funny that we're having this conversation because over the last week, I've had a couple things pop up recently. And I think one of them is, I love when World Financial Group, sorry, I just used somebody's name, uses Garrett's book of What Would the Rockefellers Do? Saying, oh, this is how the Rockefellers do it. And you know that they can't sell whole life. They sell index universal life. And I'm like, bro, you haven't even read the book. Like it tells you not to use that in the book. Like how do you defeat that with your clients? It just kind of blows my mind on that stuff. I heard another one. There's this family office guy that my buddy was talking to. He's like, bro, you know that life insurance been debunked, right? And I'm like, been debunked? Come on, dude. And then another one recently, guy came to me, he was like, hey, have you checked out this guy? He's making like 40 grand a month right now off of a community that teaches business or Christian men about business. And I applaud him, and I think it's amazing, and I think it's great, but that dude doesn't know jack squat. And I think this stuff is funny because it's like in the marketing world, for you to be the most profitable, you have to niche down and you have to repel more people away than you attract so that you have the community that's like-minded in the things that you're doing. And I think like I get that. And there's a million ways to build wealth in all that you're doing. It's just, sometimes I realize that most people don't do the math or the economics that go behind it and don't know how to.
Let's touch on the course for a second, because I think we could appear to be talking out of both sides of our mouth if somebody's listened to our other podcast. And this is what I mean by that. We are not saying that you shouldn't invest in yourself and look to grow. I have bought a ton of courses, so has Nate. I'm sure Brock has too. We paid for mentoring. But if you're wanting to grow and you don't have the resources to dive into learning something new as far as financially yet, there are so many free resources that require nothing other than your time that can really get the ball rolling to change how you're thinking about how you think if you're trying to do that. There is a place for courses, and I don't think they're all bad. I think you have to really get to the heart of how it's being presented and what's behind the curtain. What I mean by that is, what are they providing beyond just paying for the course? And there's a lot of ways you can vet that. Find other people who bought the course. Try to find somebody who you may know who's gone through their process. What did you gain from it? Just like you would vet anybody that you were potentially going to work with, So that's important. What about this one? There are maybe some out there who say debt is always bad. Now, I'm going to challenge us not to get stuck on one radio talking head or one mindset that we know says that often, but debt isn't always bad
Yeah,
if
we
you
don't have to
understand it.
go. Yeah, we we don't have to go super deep into this because we've done an entire episode on good debt versus bad debt. But a real simple way to evaluate the good and the bad is what is creating value for you, what's putting money in your pocket, what's taking money out of your pocket. That's something. I mean, there's a lot of typical advice out there on social media, and one of the things that is very typical is hearing about you should never go into debt. Stay out of debt, stay out of debt, stay out of debt. Yes, but you have to define exactly the degree of debt that we're talking about. Is it good or is it bad? And so, the debt can be used in a really powerful way when you understand it. Don't jump into things that you don't understand. Make sure that you're not putting enormous risk, not putting yourself in a situation where you're going to be over leveraged or something like that. You have to understand that there are ways to properly apply the principle of leverage in your life where it's almost a guaranteed win. There's a whole lot of things that are going to drain you, suck you dry, so to speak, if you're not careful and you're not doing what you need to do.
Well, we can think about debt this way too. And we'll go back to how Brock, a lot of times when he's working with some of his members that are around his age that have been super successful and they want to go do this thing, and he'll ask them, why? So why do you want to do that? And that's important because everybody and where they are at their stage of life, the why may be a little bit different. So it may make sense for one person and it may not make sense for the other person. And I think that's a great way, going back to the whole idea of gurus out there, is if it's a blanket statement that's cookie cutter for everybody, that's a good indicator to run, because finances are not cookie cutter. Because Brock may want to be able to play golf 3 days a week and that will be financially free for him. I may want to be able to rock climb 4 days a week. Nate may be where he wants to be able to sit on a beach, 6 weeks out of the year. Well, that may require different things, even if we all had the same portfolio to start with. Brock, what you thinking?
A lot. The first thing I'm thinking is, do you really rock climb?
No, I have before with the kids, and it's a lot of fun, but not anything real intense.
Gotcha.
Well,
No, I think a lot of times you gotta just ask yourself, like, first blanket statements that, you can't do anything with that. You already know that it's bad. But most people don't understand business and marketing the way that it's, intended. And business marketing, like the number one rule, like you have to figure out who your avatar is, repel everybody who isn't, attract everybody who is. So you've got to understand from a standpoint of, hey, this is where they're standing and where they're looking. What are we going to do about it? Like, how do we go about thinking through on their side of the page? What are they trying to do? And then what are we trying to do?
What about this thought process? High risk can guarantee a high return.
Stupid.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, Garrett talks about this. Higher risk means higher probability of loss. I've used the analogy before. Like if the speed limit is 60 and I go 120, I might get there faster, but I also might run and hit a tree, or I might get pulled over. Like the probability of me getting there safely is drastically different than if I'm going the speed limit of 60 miles an hour.
One of the things that I enjoy that we get to do the most when somebody comes into our process and they're open to learning and diving into how they think about how they think is when people realize they don't have to chase risk to get clarity and peace of mind of how their money's working for them. They can actually create stability and certainty and control. That's a lot of fun because then they're like, "Oh, okay. Well, I can go make some calculated decisions because I want to get here from here, but I don't have to go do anything crazy that could jeopardize the things that matter to me the most." And I don't know about you guys, but I notice often that somewhere in the back of people's minds, they do think that's the reality. I need to go put my dollar in something I don't fully understand for a potential return. I mean, that just logically doesn't make sense, but that's kind of the way marketing has conditioned us to believe is that I have to do that. Why is that? I mean, I think we know why, but let's touch on why.
One of the things, so I did a poll earlier this week. Hard to grasp the fact that we're still in the same week that I did this, but I did a poll for people under the age of 45 when it came to finances. I couldn't tell you how many people said that they felt like they were behind or they were stressed, worried about the fact that they're running out of time. And the people who said that were all under the age of 35. This goes to show like media marketing has put everybody on this path that they think they have to be prepared for some number of like at age 65. And it's a half feeling of a half truth of something that they don't even know what both sides of the coin look like. It's like, okay, well, why do you feel that way? Why do you feel like you're behind? What is there to be behind about? When you can help people understand simple things like, hey, what's the difference between a gross return and a net return? If you're going to get a gross return of 7%, that's like a 4%, 5% net return. Where can you get that? Where can you create that? And if you can build certainty and predictability within your finances from that certainty and predictability of growing your wealth, you can then branch off of that, adding a little bit more risk because everybody needs some risk in their life to create more wealth. But a lot of it, you got to just step back and say, hey, what is it that I want? Where am I going? And understanding I need to talk to somebody that knows a little bit more about finances than I do, but I should probably ask that person as well about what they know about finances and what they're doing personally.
Yeah, the typical financial advice that's out there effectively creates more uncertainty for people in a time in life where they need more certainty because we don't know what tax rates are going to be in the future. We don't know what inflation, the cost of anything is going to be in the future. And so all of these things are just creating a massive bubble of uncertainty for people later in life. And we've had conversations about the value of a volatility buffer for people. When you're able to use whole life insurance to complement your retirement strategies later on. The typical number for withdrawal rates like 4%. Some would say, like Tom Wall, it's really should be more around 3%. But even at 4%, you're putting yourself in a lot of risk of drawing down in those uncertain times when you don't know what the market's going to be and everything like that. When your accounts are lower and you're still pulling down on them, so to speak, pulling the lever on that, and you're not going to get that momentum back. So having a volatility buffer to complement your retirement strategy, whatever that might be, can be really powerful. That is where you start to bring certainty back over to your side of the table.
So when we think about certainty and we're interacting with someone that we get to walk them through our process and we're asking them questions, what we're really helping them figure out is what is the formula that you need to execute on to live the lifestyle that you want to live. Okay. And so a lot of times that unearths, well, what do you really believe about retirement? And most of the time, like Brock alluded to, most people have a belief about retirement that has been shoved down their throat, for lack of a better term, for their entire life and the generation before. But if you really ask someone, what do you envision as far as your highest quality of life being today, tomorrow, 10 years from now, 15 years, 20 years from now? Well, then you kind of separate the money piece and you start really getting clarity on how you live your life intentionally. And the money just allows that to happen. So it'll debunk a lot of these myths we hear out there about like there's a secret formula to success. Well, first of all, everybody's success is different. The problem is that the world has been conditioned to believe that this is success. And so we, like sheep to slaughter, follow everybody else because that's what we've been conditioned to believe. But when you get to have those genuine conversations with somebody who really is like, hey, what does success mean to you? Then it helps you, as Nelson said, in Becoming Your Own Banker, once we know what the problem is, we'll know what to do. Once we get clarity on what the problem is, then we really get clarity on how we take steps to accomplish that lifestyle that we want to live. And then it eliminates this pie in the sky. There's a get rich quick scheme out there. There's only one way to success. And that is a whole different way of thinking. So do either one of you guys have a story or a person you've interacted with recently or a favorite member success mindset conversation you've had recently that really alludes to this, of them coming around to this shift in thinking that kind of debunks a lot of these myths? I put you on the spot. I didn't give you all heads up ahead of time to be thinking about that. Sorry.
I'm thinking about a conversation that I had recently with a guy who's early 30s. He had really come around to this idea of starting to become his own banker and take control and all those things. And really, he sort of laid down the microwave mentality that he sees all around him and in his friend groups and everything like that. But he was sharing with me that his dad has run up massive amounts of debt, essentially chasing all these lifestyle. Like his dad makes good money and they had family money and everything like that. And he's just chasing all these different things, trying to fill a void that ultimately he can't fill. I think about that and how it connects to the social media world that we live in today. And Brandon, you just kind of touched on it. The guys who are, flashing around their Lamborghinis, their Ferraris, their watches, their houses, all that stuff. It has made people to believe that those are the things that they need to be pursuing. And I think one of the things that is really powerful whenever we connect with people, because I can think of a lot of different stories over the last 6.5, 7 years that we've had, just awesome conversations and great experiences we've had getting to see people sort of transition into new things that they want to be a part of, seeing their minds sort of transformed and how they think, becoming your own banker and really starting to adopt this mentality, protection in order to grow, really becomes a selfless act in a lot of ways. And it really demonstrates that, I don't have to go chase all those things right away. I can build the foundation, set myself up to enable me to do other things in the future if I choose to do those, but my priorities may be different by that point. Who knows?
We got a couple different ones. And let me first say this. We've said a few times, like all these guys with the watches and the Lamborghinis and all this, like, I have no problem with that. I love that stuff. Like, we're not saying, oh, you need to be broke. Like, no, you should be as wealthy as you possibly can. Like, that should be your goal. Be as wealthy as you possibly can, because if you do that, that means, one, you're being a good steward. Two, you're working hard like you should. You can bless other people when you have really good things, right? So I think it was yesterday, having this conversation, friend of mine, like 43 years old, and he's worth
Young.
young. Technically, he's 3 years past old, but whatever. He's worth about 30 million. He's got 200% more coming in of passive income than his lifestyle expenses. The dude's just stupid wealthy. And he was like, man, I buy term and save the difference. Like, I don't think you should put your investments and your insurance together. I don't see why somebody would do whole life insurance. And so he was like, and I don't want to make my kids rich. I don't want to give them a bunch of money because I started off broke, and I think it would be a good idea. That gives them a good edge. So I said, okay, fine. So you're 43. Do you plan to continue making more money? I was like, yeah. I said, do you think that your assets are going to continue to grow? I said, yeah, but I've got a really tight estate plan. I'm good there. All right, fine. And then I was saying, okay, so you don't want your kids to be stupid wealthy to where they have anything and everything that they could want. You want them to be trust fund babies. But do you plan to just give everything away and quit everything that you have once you pass away? What's the plan? It's like, no, they're probably going to grow and I'm going to pass them on, but they're going to be within the trust. Like, okay, well, you're worth 30. That's more than 24. Don't know if you know this, but you're going to pay some taxes. Are you putting money in a bucket somewhere that you're going to let your kids have to pay all the taxes on the stuff? Do you plan on having them fire sell everything after your wife dies? No. I'd be like, yeah, that would kind of suck if you did that, because then you built everything for nothing but to pay the taxes. So, well, you could put a penny aside today to pay for a life insurance death benefit to have when you pass away. That all it does is go and pays those taxes. So your family generational wealth continue on. And he was like, oh, I didn't think of that. Then the next thing I said was, so you said that you're bringing in more income way over what you're spending on your lifestyle expenses. I said, yeah. I'm like, all right, so does it all just sit in the checking account and then it disappears the next day? He's like, no. So you have a savings account? Yeah. So do you like having an account that fluctuates in an interest rate? It's taxable in the interest rate and it's open to creditors all the time? Or would you rather have a place where you know what the interest rate is going to be for the rest of your life and it can only go up? It's tax-free and it's protected from creditors. So, well, I probably want the second one. So, yeah, I probably would agree. But what's happening is somebody has you thinking of your finances in a math perspective rather than a macroeconomic perspective. You've got to understand that a choice that you make today ripples into other choices. And so once he began to see that light, it was kind of like, oh, wait a second, this does actually make sense. Because I am going to be continuing to save money somewhere. I am going to continue to grow my assets, and I should probably put it somewhere that I have control, that is protected, and it is guaranteed, and it is liquid. And he saw the light.
And that all became clear to him from questions. And I really want that to marinate for everybody listening or watching. The greatest impact that Nate, Brock, and I have experienced in our growth is when we've been asked questions to challenge how we think about things, to help us get clarity on how we're going to think about them moving forward. And if I were to say there's anything that I enjoy, one of the things that I enjoy that we get to do the most is we get to ask questions. So anybody listening to this, like, what is it like to work with, Nate, Brock, or Brandon? Brock just gave you a real good example of it. There's no telling you what to do. There's no you should do this, or you're dumb, or this is the only way you can be successful. It's like, hey, what do you want? How do you think? What matters to you? Where do you want to go in life? Who do you want to provide value to? What's important to you? Because Brock, we hear all the time often, I don't want my kids to be trust fund babies. Well, good. That makes perfect sense. So have you thought about and asked these questions? And when you start going on that exploration of how you've built the life you have, you want people around you who can ask good questions to let you see that there may be some unforeseen chinks in your armor. And then wise people want to protect those chinks once they know about them.
Yep.
And so that's the fun part.
The quality of your life is determined by the quality of questions you ask. And oftentimes I think that people ask questions, but they ask wrong and shallow questions. Like, there's no dumb questions, but sometimes it's shallow. Like, what's the rate of return? Who cares? I always find it funny because everybody's like, oh, well, the market goes up on average like 8%. Yeah, do you know how an average is calculated? You know how that's made? The average is the middle. That means there's something above it and then there's something below
it.
So what happens if you decide that you're going to get 8% on average every single year, And then the day you retire, you just happen to be on the bottom of that average.
I think that's a good way to tie this thought process and episode up. Is one of the best ways to expose the myths that are out there are by the questions that we ask. And if we're taking everything at surface level from a 30-second feed and we're not asking any more in-depth questions, we're going to continue to be kept in this cycle of get rich quick, or there's a secret formula to success, or it only takes a minute to become wealthy. And just being blunt, all of those things are lies to sell something. And you want to be around people who are willing to ask you genuine questions to help you understand where you want to go in life, and then you can start figuring out how you can get there. So guys, great conversation, really good insight for anybody listening that's interested in diving into what we do or learning more. Just know that this is a lot of how we walk through processes with everybody, is these kind of questions and interactions and just genuine conversation. Next week, we're going to be talking about, is your money safe in the bank? Now that ought to make some people really perk up, because that's kind of relevant for what's going on in the economy today. So until the next time, we hope you all have a blessed day. Thank you for tuning in. And we really appreciate you sharing your most valuable asset with us, your time. Have a great day.